The morning sun painted the fields of New Busan in golden light. Kang Wu walked between the rows of green crops, checking each plant with careful eyes. The corn was growing tall and strong. The wheat swayed gently in the warm breeze. Everything was perfect. Wu smiled as he touched the leaves of a tomato plant. 5 years ago, this world had been nothing but red dirt and rocks. Now it was home to 40,000 humans. They had built something beautiful here, something peaceful. "Wu, breakfast is ready," So Young called from their house. His wife stood in the doorway, her dark hair tied back with a blue ribbon. She wore the simple clothes of a farmer's wife, but to Wu she was the most beautiful woman in the galaxy. "Coming," he called back. He picked a ripe tomato and jogged toward the house. Their twin daughters, Hye-jin and Da-eun, sat at the kitchen table. Both girls were 8 years old with bright eyes and quick smiles. "Papa, look what I grew," Da-eun said. She held up a small flower pot with a tiny pink rose inside. The petals were perfect, each one shaped like a small heart. Wu sat down and examined the flower carefully. "This is wonderful, Da-eun. How did you make the petals this shape?" "I mixed the seeds like you taught me," she said proudly. "I wanted to make something new and pretty." Hee-jin rolled her eyes. "Flowers are boring. I want to learn how to fix the big machines like Papa does." So Young laughed as she served rice and vegetables. "You both have plenty of time to decide what you want to do. For now, just be children." After breakfast, Wu walked the girls to school. The town center was busy with people starting their day. Mrs. Park sold fresh bread from her bakery. Mr. Lee repaired farming tools in his workshop. Children played in the small park while their parents talked about the weather and the harvest. Mr. Kang called Administrator Park Jin. He was a thin man with worry lines around his eyes. "Do you have a moment?" Wu kissed his daughters goodbye and watched them run into the school building. Then he walked over to Park Jin. "What is it?" Wu asked. Park Jin looked around nervously. "We received a message from Earth Command this morning. There are reports of unknown ships in the outer systems. They want all colonies to be ready for anything." Wu frowned. "What kind of ships?" "They don't know. The ships don't respond to any messages. They just watch and then disappear." Park Jin wiped sweat from his forehead. "It's probably nothing, but we should check our emergency systems." "I'll look at the shelters today," Wu promised. As the colony's chief engineer, he was responsible for all the important systems. The emergency shelters were built deep underground. They could protect everyone for weeks if needed. But Wu wasn't really worried. New Busan was far from the main space routes. No one had any reason to bother them. They were just farmers trying to make a living. He spent the morning checking the shelter systems. Everything worked perfectly. The air recyclers hummed quietly. The food storage areas were full. The communication equipment connected clearly to the other settlements. At lunchtime, Wu returned home. So Young had prepared his favorite soup with fresh vegetables from their garden. They sat together on their porch looking out at the peaceful fields. "Do you ever miss Earth?" So Young asked. Wu thought about it. "Sometimes, but this feels more like home now. We built this place with our own hands. We made something good here." So Young nodded. "The girls love it here. They have so much room to run and play. On Earth, they would be stuck in those tiny city apartments. They'll grow up free here," Wu said. "They can become anything they want." The peaceful afternoon was broken by a loud sound from the sky. Wu looked up and saw a bright light moving across the blue sky. It was too big to be a ship from Earth. Too fast to be a cargo transport. "What is that?" So Young asked. Before Wu could answer, more lights appeared. Dozens of them, moving in perfect formation. They were ships, but unlike any ships Wu had ever seen. They were dark and angular like metal insects. The ships stopped above the town center. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then a voice boomed from every speaker in the colony. "Humans of this world," the voice said. It was cold and harsh, speaking human words with difficulty. "You are now property of the Vorthak Empire. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Wu grabbed So Young's hand. We need to get the girls. They ran toward the school, but the ships were already moving. Bright beams of light shot down from the sky. Where the beams touched, buildings exploded into flames. The bakery disappeared in a flash of white light. The repair shop crumbled into smoking ruins. People screamed and ran in all directions. Some tried to reach their homes. Others fled toward the fields. The lucky ones made it to the emergency shelters before the next wave of attacks began. Creatures poured out of the ships. They were tall and thin, covered in gray scales. They wore metal armor and carried weapons that fired bolts of deadly energy. They moved like insects, quick and precise. They killed without mercy or hesitation. Wu saw Administrator Park Jin try to wave a white flag. One of the creatures looked at him for a moment, then fired its weapon. Park Jin simply disappeared, leaving only a small pile of ash. The school, So Young gasped. They ran faster, dodging the energy bolts that flew over their heads. The school building was still standing, but creatures were already moving toward it. Teachers were trying to get the children to safety, but there was nowhere to go. Wu reached the school entrance just as the creatures broke down the doors. He pushed inside, searching frantically for his daughters. "Papa," Hyejin called out. She was hiding under a desk with 3 other children. "Where's Daun?" "I don't know," Wu said. He pulled Hyejin out from under the desk. "We have to find her and get to the shelters." They searched the burning building, calling Daun's name. Smoke filled the air. The ceiling began to crack and groan. Finally, Wu heard a small voice from the garden classroom. "Papa, help me." Daun was trapped under a fallen beam. Her leg was hurt, but she was alive. Wu lifted the beam while So Young pulled their daughter free. "Can you walk?" So Young asked. Daun tried to stand but fell down again. "It hurts, Mama." Wu picked up Daun while So Young took Hyejin's hand. They ran from the burning school toward their house. Maybe they could still reach the emergency shelter in their neighborhood. But when they reached their street, everything was gone. The houses were nothing but piles of smoking rubble. The gardens were burned black. The trees they had planted were now twisted metal sculptures. And standing in the ruins of their home were 3 of the gray creatures. They were loading captured humans into a metal cage. Wu recognized some of his neighbors among the prisoners. They all looked terrified and hurt. One of the creatures saw Wu's family. It raised its weapon and pointed it at them. "Run," Wu whispered. They ran back toward the fields, but more creatures appeared from every direction. There was nowhere to go, no way to escape. A bright light surrounded them. When the light faded, they were inside one of the alien ships. The walls were made of dark metal covered with strange symbols. The air smelled like burning plastic. Other humans were already there, crowded together in fear. Wu saw Mrs. Park crying over her dead husband. Mr. Lee sat in shocked silence, blood running down his face. Children called for their parents, who would never answer. Daun was still holding her little pink rose. The flower was crushed now, its heart-shaped petals broken and brown, but she held it tightly against her chest. "It's going to be okay," Wu told his daughters. But even as he said the words, he knew they were not true. The ship began to move. Through a small window, Wu watched New Busan grow smaller and smaller until it was just a point of light. Then even that disappeared. They had taken his world. They had taken his home, and now they were taking his family away to some unknown fate among the stars. Dawn's broken flower fell from her hands to the metal floor. Wu picked it up and put it in his pocket. Somehow he knew he would need to remember this moment. The moment when everything peaceful and beautiful in his life came to an end. The moment when he stopped being a farmer and became something else entirely. 6 months had passed since the Vorthak came to New Busan. The beautiful farming world was now a dead rock covered in ash and metal. The aliens had built their own structures over the ruins of human homes. They used the planet as a refueling station for their warships. Kang Wu crouched in a cave high in the mountains, watching the alien base through broken binoculars. His clothes were dirty and torn. His face was thin from months of eating whatever he could find. But his eyes burned with a cold fire that had not been there before. "They're moving another group of prisoners today," said Nam Tai-ho. He was the former security chief of New Busan. Now he was Wu's second in command in their small group of survivors. How many ships? Wu asked. 3 transport vessels. Maybe 200 people inside them. Taeho lowered his own binoculars. We could hit them at the narrow pass, same as last time. Wu shook his head. Too risky. We're not strong enough to save them all. We need to be smarter. Dr. Yoon Mira crawled over to join them. She had been the colony's only doctor. Now she was their medic and communications expert. Her hands were always busy, either treating wounds or working on their makeshift radio equipment. I've been listening to their transmissions again, she said quietly. They're talking about something called processing centers, places where they take the prisoners. What kind of processing? Wu asked. I don't know. But I heard them mention coordinates. Several different star systems. They're spreading our people across the galaxy. Wu felt his chest tighten. His family could be anywhere by now. They could be dead, or worse. But he had to believe they were still alive. That hope was all that kept him going. We need better intelligence, he said. We need to know more about their operations. Over the past 6 months, their small band had grown from 5 survivors to almost 30. They lived in a network of caves that Wu had found using his knowledge of the planet's geology. The caves were hidden and well protected. The Vorthak had never found them. They had also learned to fight. In the beginning, they had only simple weapons and no training. But Taeho had taught them basic military tactics. Wu had shown them how to make explosives from farming chemicals. Dr. Mira had trained them in first aid and field medicine. Their first successful attack had been against a Vorthak patrol. They had used Wu's homemade bombs to destroy 2 alien vehicles and kill 8 of the creatures. The victory had felt good, but it had also taught them how dangerous their enemies were. The Vorthak were not just stronger and better armed. They were completely ruthless. After the patrol attack, they had burned down the remains of 3 human settlements. They had killed 200 prisoners in response to the death of 8 of their soldiers. We can't win by fighting them directly. Wu had told his people after that day, we have to be smarter. We have to learn everything about them. So they had become students of war. They studied Vorthak patrol patterns. They mapped their supply routes. They learned to recognize different types of alien soldiers and vehicles. They captured pieces of Vorthak technology and tried to understand how it worked. Wu spent hours every day working on the alien devices they had found. His engineering background helped him figure out some of their systems. The Vorthak used energy, sources that were completely new to him. Their computers operated on different principles than human machines. But slowly, he was beginning to understand their technology. I think I know how their communication systems work, he told the group one evening. They were gathered around a small fire deep in their main cave. The flame cast strange shadows on the rock walls. Their signals are encoded with biological markers, Wu explained. Each Vorthak has a unique genetic signature. Their radios only work for specific individuals. That's why we can't use their equipment, said Taeho. Right. But if we could fake those biological markers somehow, we might be able to listen to their communications, maybe even send false messages. Dr. Mira looked interested. I've been studying the blood samples we took from dead Vorthak soldiers. Their genetic structure is very different from ours. But there might be a way to synthesize their biological markers. It was dangerous work. They had to get close to Vorthak positions to collect samples and equipment. Several of their people had been killed or captured during these missions. But slowly, they were building a picture of their enemy. The Vorthak Empire was vast. They had been conquering other species for thousands of years. They saw themselves as the superior race in the galaxy. All other life forms were either resources to be used or obstacles to be removed. They have a rigid military structure, Taeho explained during one of their planning sessions. Each unit has a specific role. The gray ones we see most often are basic soldiers. The larger black ones are officers. The red ones are specialists. What about the prisoners? Asked Sung-ho, one of their newer recruits. What do they do with them? Different things, Dr. Mira said. Some are used as slave labor in their mines and factories. Others are sent to research facilities. The strongest ones are forced to fight in their armies. And the children? Sung-ho asked quietly. No one answered. They all knew what happened to the children, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Wu thought about his daughters every day. Hyejin would be 9 now, Da-eun too if she was still alive. Were they in some alien prison, scared and alone? Were they being forced to work in dangerous conditions? Were they being used for experiments? The not knowing was worse than any physical pain. But it also gave him strength. As long as he didn't know for sure that they were dead, he could keep fighting. 3 weeks later, their breakthrough came from an unexpected source. They were attacking a Vorthak supply convoy when one of the alien vehicles crashed instead of exploding. Inside, they found a Vorthak soldier who was still alive but badly injured. "Kill it," said Taeho, raising his weapon. "Wait," Wu said. "Let's see if it can talk." The alien was smaller than the others they had seen. Its scales were a lighter gray color, and its eyes were different. "Less cold, less empty. Please," the creature said in broken human words. "Do not kill me." Everyone stared in shock. None of them had ever heard a Vorthak speak their language before. "You can understand us?" Wu asked. "Yes. I learned your speech, from prisoners. I am called Veltar. I am an engineer, like you." "How do you know I'm an engineer?" "I studied your colony before the attack. I helped design the invasion plan." Veltar's voice was filled with shame. "I am sorry for what we did, to your people." Wu felt anger rising in his chest. This creature had helped plan the attack that destroyed his life. He wanted to kill it with his bare hands. But then he saw something in Veltar's eyes. Something that looked almost human. Fear, yes, but also regret. Guilt. Maybe even hope. "Why are you sorry?" Wu asked. "Because I have seen what the Empire does to conquered peoples. I have watched children die in the processing centers. I have seen the experiments. I cannot be part of it anymore." "You're a deserter?" "Yes. I was trying to reach the outer systems when your attack damaged my ship. I want to find a place where I can hide from the Empire." Wu looked at his companions. They were all watching, him waiting for his decision. He could kill this alien and feel good about it for a few minutes, or he could take a chance that might change everything. "Tell me about the processing centers," he said finally. Veltar closed his eyes. "There are dozens of them across the galaxy. They are where the Empire sorts the conquered peoples. The strong ones go to labor camps. The smart ones go to research facilities. The children go to adaptation centers." "What are adaptation centers?" "Places where young beings are taught to serve the Empire. They are broken down and rebuilt as loyal servants. Most do not survive the process." Wu felt his heart stop. "Where are these centers?" "There is one on Korath Prime, another on Zarian. The largest is on Thukal Station near the galactic core." "How do I get there?" Veltar opened his eyes and looked at Wu carefully. "You cannot. They are heavily guarded. Only high-ranking Imperial officers can access them." "Then I'll become a high-ranking Imperial officer." Everyone stared at him. Even Veltar looked shocked. "That is impossible," the alien said. "You are human. The Empire would never accept you." "Maybe not as a human," Wu said slowly. "But what if I wasn't human anymore?" He was thinking about the biological markers in Vorthak technology, about Dr. Mira's research into alien genetics, about the surgical techniques they had learned from captured medical equipment. "You are thinking of disguising yourself as Vorthak?" Veltar asked. "Is it possible?" Veltar was quiet for a long time. "It would be very dangerous. The physical changes alone could kill you. And if you were discovered, the Empire would do things to you that are worse than death." "But is it possible?" "Yes," Veltar said finally. "With the right equipment and knowledge, it might be possible. But why would you take such a risk?" Wu looked around at his friends. These people who had lost everything but still fought on. These people who trusted him to lead them. "Because fighting them here isn't enough," he said. "We can kill a few soldiers, we can destroy a few ships, but the Empire is too big, too strong. To really hurt them, we have to strike at their heart. And you think one man can do that?" I think one man in the right place can do anything. That night, Wu sat alone outside the cave looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, his family was waiting for him. The pain was beyond anything Wu had ever imagined. He lay on the metal table in their hidden medical cave, his body burning from the inside out. Dr. Mira worked carefully with the alien surgical tools they had stolen from a Vorthak medical ship. Veltar guided her hands, explaining each step of the terrible process. The bone modifications are the hardest part, Veltar said quietly. Your skull structure must be changed to match Vorthak anatomy. If we make any mistakes, you will die. Wu gritted his teeth as another wave of pain shot through his head. They had been working on him for 6 hours. First, they had injected synthetic Vorthak DNA into his bloodstream. Then they had begun the physical changes. His skin was already different. Gray scales were growing where human flesh used to be. His eyes had been altered to look more reptilian. His hands now had longer fingers with sharp claws at the tips. How much longer? He gasped. Several more hours, Dr. Mira said. Her hands were steady, but Wu could see the worry in her eyes. The neural implants are next. They will help you think like a Vorthak. But not too much, Veltar warned. If the implants change your mind completely, you will become what you are pretending to be. You must remember who you really are. The neural surgery was the worst part. Wu felt alien thoughts creeping into his mind as the implants connected to his brain. He saw flashes of Vorthak memories that were not his own. He felt their cold hatred for other species, their belief that they were superior to all other life forms. For a moment, he almost forgot why he was doing this. The human part of his mind seemed small and distant. Then he thought of his daughters, and his true self came rushing back. It's working, Veltar said with surprise. Your human will is stronger than I expected. The implants are integrating, but your core personality remains intact. When the surgery was finally over, Wu looked at himself in a mirror. The face that stared back was not human. Gray scales covered his skin. His eyes were yellow and cold. His skull was longer and more angular. Even his own mother would not recognize him. You look like a Vorthak from the Outer Rim territories, Veltar said. A warrior clan called the Korthve. They are known for being fierce fighters, but not very intelligent. It will explain any mistakes you make. Wu practiced speaking with his new voice. The vocal changes made him sound harsh and reptilian. Veltar taught him basic Vorthak military phrases and customs. How to stand like a soldier. How to show respect to superior officers. How to hide his human thoughts behind a mask of alien coldness. Remember, Veltar said, you are Korthwe, displaced warrior seeking to join the Empire's expansion forces. Your clan was destroyed by pirates. You have nothing left but your desire to serve the Empire. 3 weeks later, Wu stood in the recruitment center on Nexus Station. The space station was huge, filled with thousands of different alien species. Most were either Vorthak soldiers or slaves from conquered worlds. The recruitment officer was a large black-scaled Vorthak with red eyes. He looked at Wu with suspicion. You claim to be Korthve, the officer said. But you have no identification, no military records. Pirates destroyed everything, Wu replied in his new voice. They killed my clan brothers, burned our ships. I barely escaped with my life. And now you want to join the 47th Siege Battalion? Yes, Commander. I want revenge against the enemies of the Empire. I want to prove my worth in battle. The officer studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Very well, Korthwe. We can always use another killer. Report to Commander Grakvul for assignment. Wu spent the next 2 years serving in the 47th Siege Battalion. He fought in campaigns against 3 different alien species. Each battle taught him more about Vorthak military tactics and technology. Each victory earned him more trust from his commanders. The hardest part was watching the Empire destroy innocent civilizations. On Shardai Prime, he watched Vorthak ships turn beautiful crystal cities into rubble. The Shardai were peaceful, beings who communicated through musical tones. They had never hurt anyone, But the Empire needed their world for its rare minerals. Wu was forced to participate in the slaughter. He had to kill Shardai civilians to maintain his cover. Each death made him hate himself more, but he remembered his daughters and kept going. On the ocean world of Tidal Song, he helped capture the aquatic tide runners. These graceful beings lived in underwater cities filled with art and music. The Empire enslaved them to work in their deep-sea mining operations. Most would die within a year from the brutal working conditions. The worst was the destruction of the Moss Gardens Collective. These plant-like beings had created a paradise world covered in beautiful gardens. They harmed no one and asked only to be left in peace. But the Empire saw their world as perfect for a new military base. Wu watched the Vorthak use chemical weapons to kill every single moss garden being on the planet. Millions of peaceful creatures died in agony. Their beautiful gardens withered and turned black. Within days, construction crews began building military facilities over the mass graves. "Efficient work," Commander Grakvil said, as they watched the construction from orbit. "This base will be operational within 6 months." "Yes, Commander," Wu replied. Inside he was screaming, but each atrocity also strengthened his resolve. The Empire was not just an enemy to be defeated. It was a cancer that had to be cut out of the galaxy completely. No compromise was possible with creatures this evil. Wu's military performance was excellent. His engineering background helped him solve tactical problems that other soldiers could not handle. During the siege of Kelleran IV, his innovations saved an entire battalion from a clever enemy trap. "You think differently than other Korthvei," Commander Grakvil told him after the victory. "There is real intelligence behind those yellow eyes." "I learn from every battle, Commander. Each enemy teaches me something new." "Good. The Empire needs soldiers who can adapt and think. I am promoting you to strategic operations. You will be transferred to Drakthul to serve under High War Master Thuvran himself." Wu felt his heart skip a beat. Drakthul was the military command center for this entire sector of the galaxy. High War Master Thuvran was the architect of the human conquest. Getting close to him had been Wu's goal from the beginning. "I'm honored, Commander," he said. "You should be." Thuvran personally reviews every officer assigned to his staff. If he accepts you, your career in the Empire is assured. If he rejects you, you will probably be executed. Drakthul was a volcanic world covered in active lava flows and poisonous gas clouds. The Vorthak had built their fortress inside an extinct volcano, using the planet's natural heat to power their operations. It was one of the most heavily defended locations in the Empire. Wu arrived on a military transport with 50 other officers being transferred to the fortress. Most were experienced veterans with distinguished service records. He was the only one from the Outer Rim territories. The fortress was massive. Thousands of Vorthak soldiers worked in its underground chambers. The walls were covered with displays showing the locations of Imperial fleets across the galaxy. Command centers coordinated attacks on dozens of worlds simultaneously. High War Master Thuvran was the largest Vorthak Wu had ever seen. He stood, over 8 feet tall with black scales that seemed to absorb light. His red eyes glowed like hot coals. When he spoke, every other Vorthak in the room fell silent. "Korthwei," Thuvran said, reading from Wu's service record. "An interesting career. From refugee to battalion hero in only 2 years. Tell me, what drives you to serve the Empire with such dedication?" Wu had prepared for this question. "Revenge. War Master. The pirates who destroyed my clan serve the enemies of the Empire. Every victory against the Empire's foes brings me closer to avenging my fallen brothers. Revenge is a powerful motivator," Thuvran agreed. "But it can also make a soldier reckless. How do I know you will not throw away your life in some foolish quest for personal satisfaction?" "Because my revenge means nothing if the Empire falls. War Master, I must help the Empire grow strong so that its enemies have nowhere to hide." Thuvran studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Well answered. You will serve in Strategic Operations Division 7. Your assignment is to analyze enemy weaknesses and recommend tactical improvements. Your first project will be reviewing the efficiency of our prisoner processing centers. Wu felt his heart race. This was exactly what he had hoped for. Access to information about where the Empire held its prisoners. Thank you, War Master. I will not disappoint you. See that you do not. Failure is not tolerated in my command. That night, alone in his quarters, Wu accessed the Imperial database for the first time. He searched carefully for information about the processing centers, particularly those that handled human prisoners. What he found made him sick with grief and rage. Processing Center Korath Prime had processed 15,000 human prisoners in the past 2 years. Most had been assigned to mining operations with an average survival rate of 8 months. The records showed that a prisoner named So Young had died in a mining accident 18 months ago. His wife was dead. The woman who had shared his dreams and helped him build a life on New Busan was gone forever. But the records also showed something else. 2 human children, age 8, had been transferred from Korath Prime to the adaptation facility on Zerion. Wu sat at his desk in the Strategic Operations Center, staring at the communication relay schematics on his screen. Around him, dozens of Vorthak officers worked at their stations, coordinating attacks across 17 different star systems. None of them suspected that the quiet Korthvei officer in the corner was about to bring their entire empire crashing down. It had been 3 months since he learned about So Young's death, 3 months of carefully studying Imperial systems while maintaining his cover, 3 months of planning the perfect revenge. The communication network was the Empire's greatest strength. It allowed them to coordinate massive fleets across thousands of light years. Every ship, every base, every commander was connected through a web of quantum relays that stretched across the galaxy. It was also their greatest weakness. Wu had discovered that the entire network relied on a single master control node located on Drakthul itself. If that node failed, the backup systems would try to compensate. But Wu had been quietly modifying those backup systems for weeks, installing hidden code that would create cascading failures throughout the network. All he needed was the right moment to strike. That moment came when High War Master Thuvran announced a major offensive against the hegemony of free worlds. 3 massive fleets would attack simultaneously across a 100 light-year front. It was the largest military operation the Empire had attempted in decades. Begin the communication sequence, Thuvran ordered from his command throne. All fleet commanders will receive their final orders in 10 minutes. Wu's fingers moved across his console, entering the activation codes he had prepared. To anyone watching, it looked like he was performing routine maintenance on the communication protocols. Communication. Systems are operating at optimal efficiency, War Master, he reported. Excellent. Begin transmission to all fleet commanders. The moment the transmission began, Wu activated his hidden program. The virus spread through the quantum relays in seconds, invisible and unstoppable. It would remain dormant for exactly 6 hours, then activate simultaneously across the entire network. The fleets jumped into hyperspace, carrying 50,000 Vorthak soldiers to what they thought would be an easy victory. They had no idea they were flying into a trap. 6 hours later, every communication relay in the Empire failed at once. The 3 attack fleets suddenly found themselves cut off from their command structure. They couldn't receive new orders. They couldn't call for reinforcements. They couldn't even communicate with each other. The hegemony forces, warned by human resistance groups, were ready and waiting. What should have been a coordinated assault became a series of isolated battles that the Imperial fleets could not win. What is happening? Thuvran roared, as reports of disaster flooded into the command center. Why are our fleets not responding? The communication network has suffered a complete system failure, War Master, reported the chief technical officer. We are trying to restore connections, but the damage appears to be extensive. How extensive? Every relay station in 17 sectors has gone offline simultaneously. It will take weeks to repair the damage. Wu watched from his station as panic spread through the command center. Officers ran back and forth trying to make sense of the chaos. Emergency protocols were activated, but they were designed for limited failures, not a complete network collapse. Within hours, the reports started coming in. Fleet 7 had been completely destroyed near the Polaris Nebula. Fleet 12 was trapped in the Meridian system, surrounded by enemy forces. Fleet 19 had suffered 60% casualties and was retreating in disorder. It was the worst military disaster in Imperial history, but Wu was just getting started. Over the next few weeks, he began Phase 2 of his plan. Using his access to Imperial databases, he compiled detailed intelligence on supply depot locations, defensive weaknesses, and troop movements. Then he found ways to leak this information to human resistance groups across the galaxy. The method was simple but effective. He would plant the intelligence in routine supply reports, disguised as inventory data or maintenance schedules. Resistance. Codebreakers, trained by former Imperial officers who had defected, would find and decode the hidden messages. Soon, Imperial supply convoys were being ambushed with impossible accuracy. Weapons depots exploded just as new shipments arrived. Troop transports were attacked at the exact moment they were most vulnerable. "We have a spy," Thuvron announced during an emergency staff meeting. "Someone with high-level access is feeding information to our enemies." All around the table, Imperial officers looked at each other with suspicion. Trust began to break down as commanders started to suspect their own subordinates. "I want every officer's communications monitored," Thuvron ordered. "Every file access logged, every personal meeting recorded. Find this traitor." Wu nodded along with the others, even volunteering to help with the investigation. It was a dangerous game, but his cover was still intact. The Vorthak could not imagine that a human could infiltrate their ranks so completely. The real breakthrough came when Wu gained access to the location of the research facility on Xerion. The planet was heavily guarded, but the intelligence gave him what he needed to plan a rescue mission. He could not do it alone. He needed help from the human resistance, but contacting them directly would expose his position. Instead, he began planting clues about Xerion in his intelligence leaks, hoping that someone would understand and act on the information. His hope was answered when Dr. Mira's voice came through on an encrypted resistance frequency. "Korth Wei, we know who you are," she said simply. "We're coming to Xerion. Be ready." 3 weeks later, Wu was aboard a transport ship heading to Xerion as part of a routine inspection team. Officially, he was there to review the efficiency of the research operations. Unofficially, he was there to find his daughters. Xerion was a cold, gray world covered in research facilities and detention centers. The adaptation facility was the largest complex on the planet, a massive structure built into the side of a mountain. Thousands of prisoners from dozens of species were held inside its walls. The facility commander, War Captain Gektar, gave Wu a tour of the operations. What he saw made him want to kill every Vorthak in sight. Children as young as 5 were subjected to psychological conditioning designed to break their will. They were forced to watch recordings of their families being killed. They were given drugs that caused hallucinations and nightmares. They were tortured until they begged to serve the Empire. "The younger specimens adapt more quickly," Gektar explained as they walked through a corridor lined with holding cells. "We find that subjects under age 10 can be completely reconditioned within 6 months." Wu looked through the transparent walls of the cells. Inside were children from dozens of different species, all of them broken and afraid. Some rocked back and forth, whispering to themselves. Others stared at nothing with empty eyes. "What is the survival rate?" Wu asked, keeping his voice steady. "Approximately 30%. The process is necessarily harsh. Weak specimens do not survive, but those who do become perfectly loyal servants of the Empire." In the human section, Wu found what he was looking for. Hyojin sat in a small cell, her back against the wall. She was thin and pale, her eyes hollow with trauma, but she was alive. Da-Yun was in the cell next to her. She lay on a metal bed, connected to machines that monitored her brain activity. Wires ran from her skull to a computer that displayed her neural patterns. "This one is part of our advanced conditioning program," Gektar said. "We are testing new methods of neural restructuring. The results are very promising." Wu wanted to tear the alien apart with his bare hands. Instead, he nodded and made notes on his datapad. I will need to review the detailed research data, he said. This work may have applications for other facilities. That night, Wu accessed the facility's computer systems. He downloaded everything about the experiments being conducted on his daughters and thousands of other children. Then he began planning their rescue. The attack came 3 days later. Dr. Mira led a combined force of human resistance fighters and alien allies who had joined the fight against the Empire. They struck at dawn, using the intelligence Wu had, provided to bypass the facility's defenses. Wu was ready. As the battle raged outside, he made his way to the detention levels. The facility's security systems were in chaos. Alarms blared and emergency lights flashed red. He reached Hyejin's cell and used his access codes to open the door. She looked up at him with frightened eyes, seeing only another Vorthak officer. "Don't be afraid," he said in Korean, his voice distorted by the alien vocal cords. "I'm here to take you home." She stared at him in confusion. Then recognition flickered in her eyes. "Papa?" she whispered. "Yes, little one. It's me." He lifted her in his arms and carried her to Daun's cell. His younger daughter was unconscious, her body kept alive by the machines. Wu carefully disconnected the wires and monitoring devices. Daun's eyes opened as he lifted her. She looked at him with confusion and fear. "Papa," she said weakly. "You look different. I know, sweetheart. But it's still me inside." The three of them made their way through the chaos toward the evacuation point. Other prisoners were being freed by the resistance fighters. The facility's guards were overwhelmed and falling back. But Daun was badly hurt. Wu stood in his laboratory aboard the resistance ship, looking at the biological weapon he had created. The sample contained modified Earth kudzu, but this was unlike anything nature had ever produced. He had spent 6 months engineering it, to consume the specific metals and energy sources that powered Vorthak technology. In a few hours, he would release it into the water systems of 7 major Vorthak industrial worlds. Within days, their entire technological civilization would collapse. Billions would die as their cities crumbled and their ships fell from the sky. It was genocide. Complete and total revenge for what they had done to his family and countless others. Hyejin sat in the corner of the lab, drawing pictures with colored pencils. She was getting better slowly, but she still barely spoke. The trauma of her captivity had left deep scars on her mind. Sometimes she would wake up screaming in the night, calling for her mother and sister. "Papa, look," she said quietly, holding up her drawing. It was a picture of their family on New Busan before the invasion. Wu and So Young were working in the garden while Hyejin and Da-Yun played among the flowers. Everyone was smiling and happy. "It's beautiful, little one," Wu said, kneeling beside her. "Do you remember being happy like that?" She nodded. "Before the bad things happened. Will we ever be happy again?" Wu looked at the biological weapon on his workbench. It would end the war and ensure that the Vorthak could never hurt anyone again. But it would also make him responsible for the deaths of billions of beings, many of whom were probably just following orders like soldiers everywhere. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I'm going to try to make sure no one ever hurts you, again." That night, Wu prepared for his final mission. He would return to Drakthol under the pretense of delivering a routine intelligence report. Once there, he would release the biological weapon into the fortress water systems. From there, it would spread to the planet's infrastructure and eventually to supply ships that would carry it to other worlds. Dr. Mira found him packing his equipment. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "Once you release that weapon, there's no taking it back. The Vorthak Empire will be completely destroyed." "Good," Wu said. "They deserve it for what they did." "Maybe. But what about the Vorthak who opposed the Empire? What about beings like Veltar who tried to help us? Your weapon won't tell the difference between good and evil Vorthak." Wu paused in his packing. He had been so focused on revenge that he hadn't thought about innocent Vorthak who might die. But then he remembered Daun's broken body on the medical table and his resolve hardened again. "The Empire is a cancer," he said. Sometimes you have to cut out healthy tissue to make sure all the cancer is gone. Mira looked sad. That sounds like something a Vorthak would say. Her words stung, but Wu pushed the feeling aside. He had come too far to stop now. He returned to Drakthol as planned, carrying the biological weapon in a sealed container disguised as routine laboratory supplies. High War Master Thuvron was waiting for him in the command center, furious about the latest military disasters. Korthway, your intelligence reports have been invaluable, Thuvron said, but our situation continues to deteriorate. The rebellion is spreading faster than we can contain it. The humans are more resourceful than we expected, War Master, Wu replied, but I have new intelligence that may help. Present your findings, Wu gave his report, all the while waiting for the right moment to release his weapon. The fortress water systems were connected to every level of the structure. Once the biological agent was introduced, it would spread throughout the entire complex within hours. But as he spoke, something unexpected happened. A young Vorthak officer approached Thuvron with an urgent message. War Master, we have received a communication from the outer territories. The Korthway clan has been contacted about one of their missing warriors. Wu felt his blood turn cold. His cover identity was about to be exposed. What did they say? Thuvron asked. The clan leader says they have no record of any warrior named Korthway. They have had no contact with pirates in over 10 years. They believe someone is using their clan identity as a disguise. Thuvron's red eyes turned to Wu. Is this true, Korthway? Or should I call you by your real name? The game was over. Wu slowly reached for the biological weapon container, but Vorthak guards were already moving to surround him. I am Kang, Wu of New Busan, he said, dropping the disguise. You murdered my wife, you tortured my daughter, you destroyed my world. The human spy, Thuvron said with something like admiration. I should have known. No real Vorthak could have caused this much damage to our operations. Your empire is finished, Wu said. Even if you kill me, others will continue the fight. Perhaps, but your death will send a message to other would-be heroes. Thuvron raised his weapon, but Wu was faster. He threw the biological weapon container at the floor, shattering it. The modified kudzu spores spread into the air, carried quickly through the fortress ventilation systems. What have you done? Thuvron demanded. What I came here to do, Wu replied. I've ended your empire. The guards shot him then, their energy weapons burning through his disguised Vorthak body. As he fell, Wu thought of So Young and Da-Un. Soon he would see them again, but the biological weapon was already working. Within hours, metal began to dissolve throughout the fortress. Computer systems failed as their components were consumed by the engineered organisms. Weapons stopped functioning. Life support systems collapsed. The spores spread beyond Drakthol, carried by departing ships and supply transports. Within days, they reached the major industrial worlds of the empire. Within weeks, Vorthak civilization began to crumble. Ships fell from the sky as their hulls dissolved. Cities collapsed as their metal frameworks were consumed. Billions of Vorthak died as their technology-dependent society collapsed around them. But something unexpected happened in the aftermath. As news of the empire's collapse spread, former subject species began to emerge from hiding. Many had been thought extinct, wiped out by Vorthak conquest. But some had survived in hidden colonies and underground refuges. The galaxy began to heal. 5 years later, Hyejin stood in a garden on New Busan. The planet had been reclaimed and rebuilt by returning human colonists. Where Vorthak military bases had once stood, flowers now bloomed in carefully tended gardens. She was 16 now, still quiet but no longer broken. The nightmares came less frequently. She had learned to smile again, though sadness never completely left her eyes. Tell me about the flowers again, Hyejin, said Jin Seo, a young boy whose parents had died in the war. She was teaching him to garden, passing on the knowledge her father had given her. Each type represents something different, she explained, kneeling beside a patch of hybrid roses. These pink ones are for the children who died. The white ones are for parents who lost their families. The yellow ones are for hope that better days will come. What about those purple ones? Hyejin looked at the special flowers her father had created before his death. They were beautiful but strange. with petals that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. "Those are for forgiveness," she said. "Papa made them before he went away. He said that even after terrible things happen, we have to choose whether to plant flowers or poison in the soil. I don't understand. Papa could have made his weapon spread forever, consuming everything until the whole galaxy was dead, but he didn't. He made it stop after it destroyed the Empire. Then he sent instructions for these gardens to be planted on every world where the fighting happened." Jinseo thought about this. "Even on the Vorthak worlds?" "Especially on the Vorthak worlds. Papa said that revenge feels good for a little while, but gardens grow forever. They worked together in the peaceful morning, planting new flowers in the rich soil. Around them, other families tended their own garden plots. Children played among the flowers while their parents shared stories of the old days and dreams for the future. On other worlds across the galaxy, similar gardens bloomed. On former Vorthak industrial planets, flowers grew from the ruins of collapsed cities. On worlds where species had been enslaved, memorial gardens marked places where the oppressed had suffered and died. But the most beautiful gardens grew on the former sites of the worst atrocities. Where the research facility on Xerion had stood, 1,000 different species of flowers bloomed together in harmony. Where the processing centers had operated, healing gardens provided medicine and comfort to survivors. The gardens became pilgrimage sites. People traveled from across the galaxy to visit them, to remember what had been lost, and to see proof that beauty could grow from the darkest soil. In the center of New Busan's memorial garden stood a simple stone marker. It bore the names of So Young, Da Un, and Kang Wu. Below their names was a single line of text. They chose flowers over poison. As the sun set over New Busan, Hyejin picked a single purple flower and placed it on her family's memorial. Around her, the garden glowed in the fading light, filled with the colors and scents of 1,000 different blooms. The war was over, the empire was gone, and in every place where hatred had once grown, love was slowly taking root. Her father had taken their war and left behind a garden on every grave. It was a legacy that would bloom for 1,000 years, reminding future generations that even in the darkest times,